I'm Paula, that's Pete, and we're going to talk to you today about the Grand Illinois Bike Tour, which both of us were on in June of 2021. The Grand Illinois Bike Tour is an annual event. It's always in June, and it is always in a different part of, each year it's in a different part of Illinois. 6-day ride. This year it was in southwestern Illinois. It's the area they call the East Metro area. It's right across the river from St. Louis, right across the Mississippi River from St. Louis. The ride is always fully supported, so they will haul your luggage and so on for you. I believe it's limited to about 250 riders, and normally you have an option of camping or moteling on the ride. This past year, however, because of COVID, there was no camping area that wanted that many campers there, so everybody stayed in motels. This year, it will be back to the option of camping or moteling. So there were, I believe, at least 4 of us from the Arlington Heights Bicycle Club who did the tour in 2021, and we'd love to get even more people to do it in 2022. So we'll talk a little bit more about that in a few moments. So, oh, thank you for reminding me. Okay, much better, much better. Most people, because this ride was about 4 hours from home, most people went the day before to Litchfield, Illinois, which was where the ride was starting on Sunday. So I was one of the people who went early, and I went extra early so I could go to Cahokia Mountains, which is what you're seeing in the next slide here. And that is it's a pre-Columbian, the remnants of a pre-Columbian urban area near Collinsville, Illinois. So that was just an interesting thing to do before the ride started, the day before the ride started. I think later in the ride, some people rode there during the day, one of the days of the ride, and saw the site. So Sunday was the first day of riding, and we started in Litchfield, and some of us went to Lebanon, Illinois, some went to O'Fallon, and the reason for that was because neither Lebanon nor O'Fallon had enough motel rooms for everybody that was on the ride. So we had to be split. So I think Pete went to Lebanon, I went to O'Fallon, and the distances varied depending on whether you're going to Lebanon or O'Fallon. So for me that was about a 53-mile day. I think for Pete it was about a 72-mile day. Okay, this was where the local caterer had been kind enough to set up a lunch stop for us in the cafe that day, and then we were able to go across the street and eat our lunches in the park. Much of the ride last year was on trails. So you've heard of the bridges of Madison County. Okay, that's in Iowa. These are the bike trails of Madison County, Illinois, and they were very, very nice. You can see a sample here. Some of them were crushed limestone, but actually most of what we were riding was paved and very nice. A lot of them were shaded. So that was kind of a highlight of the ride, I would say, is riding on these wonderful trails. Now, in the evenings, after dinner, there'd be an informal group that would provide some entertainment, do a sing-along. So this was typical. This was Sunday evening after dinner. We had a little quartet there, and you might notice there's an Illinois celebrity in that picture. Can you figure out which one of those is the Illinois celebrity? It's the second person from the left. That is Sheila Simon, former Lieutenant Governor of Illinois and Senator Paul Simon's daughter. She was one of the riders and also a good banjo player. No bow tie, no. Apparently that's father only, not daughter.
So that's me and my Garmin. And after the first day, you can see my time was 4 hours and 39 minutes of riding. I did the 72 miles And the average speed was 15.54. I will confess that that was wind aided. The first 2 hours of the ride were downhill and with the wind. This was my first week-long ride, and I was really amped up and ready to go, and I had the tailwind, the downhill, and I was flying at the very start. So I think that, yes.
Were you holding onto a car too?
Well, so I'm very proud of that. But the night before, we were at dinner, and I asked Paula what distance she was going to ride, and she just said the standard distance. And I was like, thinking in my mind, come on, Paula, you're a great rider. You can do the 72. Come on. And so, I took off, and I was very proud of this, but I paid the price. Paula, being somewhat older and significantly wiser, chose the shorter distance. And then when I woke up the next morning, I realized why she had done that. So that's my advice to anyone who's running their first week-long ride is don't spend it all on the first day because I don't even remember riding the second day. I was in pain the second day, so.
Okay, and here is the second day. Was either from Lebanon or O'Fallon, wherever you were staying, to Edwardsville, where we were going to stay for 2 nights. And that was about a 55 mile day. And there's Pete resting.
Yeah, that was. I think I remember that, and it was a well-needed rest. I don't remember this riding the second day. I don't know where we were. All I was doing was trying to get to the next hotel because you're only on your bike. You can't go back to your car.
That's right. That's right. Got to get there.
Any wheels on your bench?
No.
No.
This was.
As I recall, this was a pretty hot day.
Well, they were all hot.
They were all hot days, which we'll discuss in a little while. But I remember getting to Edwardsville, and I wrote in my journal, "I've never been so happy to see the Holiday Inn Express in my life." I was, as the day went on, I was riding slower and slower and slower. So then day 3 was our layover day in Edwardsville. So, technically you didn't have to ride at all, but the official ride was to a small town called Staunton. So it was an out and back to Staunton and back. And again, a lot of paved bike trails that day. There's a little wildlife sighting. The cyclist was kind of veering away from the deer there on the trail. And yes, there were a few times during the tour where we were riding on historic Route 66, including a little section near Staunton. And some riders riding under viaduct there. So the next day, there was an option to cross the river on a historic bridge and go to St. Louis and ride down to the Arch on a bike path. So there's a group of Arlington and Evanston bike club members. Evanston had quite a large presence on the ride, so we rode with some of them this day. We are posing in front of the bridge, getting ready to cross the Mississippi River.
On that sign above the bridge, it says Old Chain of Rocks Bridge, I think it is.
Right, which is pedestrian and bicycle only now. I'm sure in the olden days it was for cars. Now it's strictly for pedestrians and
So
cyclists.
if you're interested in Googling something, do the Old Chain of Rocks Bridge.
Yeah. There's another view of the bridge.
So that's me, and actually that's my bike farther up a little bit. And this was in the middle of the bridge, standing over the Mississippi River. And so, all bike rides are the same. It's the destination and this really made it amazing for me to be able to stand on a bridge over the Mississippi River with my bike and my friends and things like that. It really was a highlight going there, and it was very exciting to go there. But as we stand there, we're 11 miles north of the St. Louis Gateway Arch. So we still had 11
Right.
more miles to go, and those miles were an adventure.
Right, so we got to the other side, and there was a bike path all along the other side, so on the other side, we headed south then into St. Louis, and we got to see kind of the working Mississippi River, a lot of barges and so on, and
So this is one of my favorite pictures. You can see it's a selfie, and what you don't see there is over that edge in the middle, that horizontal edge, is about 30 stairs straight down. And I was thinking, hey, let's just go, on that little Broadway walk there along the river. And it's like, I got over there and it's no warning. There's 30 stairs straight down. But I've looked at this picture several times and I think, like, what caption can we put with this picture? And I'm thinking, like, Paula standing there going, no, Pete, I think the arch is that way. So we still had a little bit of ways to go to get
right,
there.
but we got there.
This is one of the very few times in my life I've felt small,
You look small, yeah.
very small.
You look small.
It's an amazing structure, and we spent about 45 minutes just loitering around there with other people. But to get into you got to go down underneath and to buy a ticket to go up in the elevators to go up to the top. And because of the pandemic, of course, you had to register ahead of time to get tickets to go up. So I asked, and the tickets to go there were still like 4 days out. The earliest
Sold
you
out.
could, yeah,
Yeah.
the earliest you could get a ticket
Yeah.
was 4 days later.
Yeah, couldn't get in, but we had a good time loitering around, as you say.
I don't know, how many people have been up in the Gateway Arch? It's an amazing place if you want to just go someplace for a weekend. I don't know, you can't really see it there, but there are windows up there. And it's not like being in the Hancock building, because when you get up there, there's nothing below you like you are in the Hancock building. And you're looking out over the Mississippi River.
Okay,
So
we're heading back.
this was coming back. So the story to tell about on the way there, we were riding with people from Evanston, so there's a group of about 5 or 6 of us, and we got to just about a couple miles short of the arch, and I needed a bathroom break, so I just pulled off behind the wall, and they kept on going. And then I started hauling to catch up with them. And on the way there, they warned us ahead of time in writing, this is not a safe area. I mean, there were car salvage things, and it's not this beautiful Mississippi River thing you're thinking of. And they warned us, don't ride alone in there. And I'm like thinking, come on. But then it started looking kind of seedy. And I still was looking for these guys to catch up to them. And so I saw a lady standing there. She was wearing a black shirt and black slacks, and she was taking pictures. I said, did you see some riders go by here? And she said, yeah, they went that way, and which isn't the way I was going to go. So I said, thank you. And she turned around and walked away, and on the back of her shirt it said, crime scene investigation. And she was taking pictures. And so I caught up to the other guys, and I said, I saw this lady, and she was a police officer, and she was taking pictures. And they told me that there were the little numbered tent cards. They saw the little numbered tent cards on the ground next to the shell casings. So our pace picked up, and we made it to the arch. And so this is after riding 11 miles from the bridge to the arch, and then being there for 45 minutes, and then riding back. And that says rest area, and that actually is a rest area, and me coming out of the rest area before we went back east over that bridge.
Back over the bridge, back to Illinois. And then we rode to Alton, Illinois, which was our stay for the night. Now, I don't think this picture does justice to it, but Alton is right on the Mississippi River. So obviously, if you want to climb like out of downtown Alton, you have to climb a giant hill. Hills never look the same in a photograph. but that was one huge climb.
I will echo that, and this was after riding about 60 miles, and then we had to go up this hill. It must have been about 85 degrees outside, and I don't know why I stopped and took this picture, Paula contemplating the hill, but we went up, actually the next day we did another ride from there, and the ride ended going up that same hill again, which made it worse because we knew what was going to happen.
Right,
But it is the longest, steepest hill
gosh.
I've been on. And of course, in these days, we were kind of grinding up the hill, and this one woman on a tandem with, I don't know who else, she went sailing straight up that hill, and then I realized she was on an e-bike. And so that's how she's
Yeah.
waving at us,
Yeah.
going past us, going by up
How's
this
it
hill.
going? Yeah.
Oh, I could have used it. And we when we got to the top of that, we stopped, we rested under a shade tree for about 15 minutes.
That was a climb. Right, so the next day was our layover day in Alton. And so we did an out and back north to Pierre Marquette State Park, and then back south, back to Alton for the night. And that was about a 50-mile ride right along the river. And boy, on the way up, we were flying. And we didn't realize the reason we were going so quickly on the way north is because we had a tailwind. We learned that on the way back. But here, this is the lodge at Pierre Marquette State Park. That's the inside of the lodge. Very lovely. One of the outbuildings, and then they also had cabins that you could rent. So it looked like a very nice state park. So we hung around there for a while, and then headed back south and realized, the reason that we flew north to the park is because we had the tailwind. So it was a very brutal headwind on the way back. Very, very challenging.
Yeah, I'll comment on this. So on the right side under the trees was going north, downhill, and it was one of those times when you're in the zone on your bike and you could just ride all day, and this is fantastic. All of a sudden, when we turn around coming back up, this is where we had been, and you can see it's a nice wide shoulder to ride on, but that is looking back south where we still had to go yet, and I just pulled over because we needed a break. And I had this vision of riding along the Mississippi River on this bluff, and it was hot, it was into the wind, it was too long. It must have been about.
Is this a ride you're selling?
They're not doing this route this year. This was last year's route.
I'm blaming the
Don't
wind.
worry, don't worry.
I'm blaming the wind.
Oh my gosh.
But I've never ridden into a wind for that long. It was like an hour straight into
Oh
the
my
wind.
gosh,
and uphill.
it was unreal. One of my favorite stories from that day is we were riding along, going back south toward Alton into the wind, and I saw a young kid, maybe 12 years old, a boy standing by the trail drinking his Gatorade, and I thought, wow, what a trooper, this kid's out there riding the trail. Well, we saw him again later, and he had caught up to his parents, and he was having a little meltdown. Because I don't like it, it's not fun. So Pete said to me, we're all thinking the same thing, we're just not saying it. So back to Alton, back up the hill, back to our lodging, and then that night a few of us decided to skip the boxed catered dinner, and so we went out to a local brew pub that's in a former bakery building, I believe, in downtown Alton, so that was kind of cool.
Want to talk about the fire?
Oh my gosh, yes, it was a very historic day. That was the day that the downtown McDonald's in Alton, Illinois, burned down. We had nothing to do with it, but it was the news story of the day. Yeah.
We were riding down that hill, and we could see the smoke going up, and we didn't know what was going on, but it's not good news when you see a helicopter poised over the flames coming up. And it wasn't until, and as we were riding down the Mississippi, the smoke from that thing was following the wind, and it was just going right down the Mississippi with us. And
Does it smell like French fries?
Crispy French fries.
Yeah.
Okay, so the next day, Friday, was the last riding day, and it was hot. They declared, the organization declared a heat emergency day, so they scrambled. They knew a couple days in advance that it was coming, so they scrambled to make some accommodations. If you wanted to, they would bus you back to Litchfield so you could get your car and drive back, and et cetera, et cetera. So they had some, pardon me?
It was so
How hot
hot.
was it? It was so hot that they changed the route because they were fearful that the tar on some of the country roads they had planned for us would be melting. So they actually came up with a new route, and new cue sheets and so on for this.
On the bus?
They did actually rent a bus.
They did.
And anybody that didn't even want to ride the last day, they would put them on the bus and drive them back to Litchfield.
To get their car.
To get their
yes,
car,
so they could
yeah.
come back and pick up their
So
bike.
it was
yeah.
a bit of a fire
Yeah.
drill the last day and all the communications about it.
So it was a new route. Unfortunately, the new route was also became the hilliest day of the ride. You know, with the exception of the hill in Alton, this was the hilliest ride, and I think it ended up being a little bit longer than they originally had planned. It ended up being 48 miles. I think originally it was supposed to be 40-ish. They also said because of the heat, they wanted us on the road. I think they said no later than 6:30 a.m. So sure enough, we were on the road by 6:30 a.m. back to Litchfield by I think about 10:30 a.m. Back to Litchfield again, historic Route 66, and this is the historic diner where we ate the first night, the night before we actually had started riding. So the ride was over, got in our cars and went home. So yeah, let's talk about the weather.
Well, I'm just going to talk about my car ride home. During the week, I had the Ride with GPS maps downloaded on my computer, on my Garmin, so that was very helpful. We'll talk about that in a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
I also had Paula with me, and she had the lady talking to her in her ear with her turn where to go. So, I mean, I never got lost. It was great. So at the end of the ride, it was at the parking lot was at a high school, and we were able to go into the lockers of the football stadium and take showers. And Paula had advised me to bring a go bag, so I just went to my car and took that bag out and just walked in, took a shower, and had those clothes ready to put back on. So that's a free tip of if you're going to do a ride like this, have a bag in your car ready to go with the stuff that you're going to wear when you get home. So driving back, I'm just tired, but I'm thrilled, and I'm driving along thinking about this wonderful ride, and I'm getting closer, and I'm in Friday afternoon traffic in Chicago, and there's this Willis Tower ahead of me, and I go, this is not right. So I think I've been living here all my life, how did I get lost? And I ended up near Brookfield Zoo before I turned around and had to go back. So after the week-long ride and a 4-hour ride in the car in Friday afternoon Chicago traffic, I added an hour to my bike ride because I didn't have Paula with me to tell me where
the turn
to
is
turn.
coming up. Yeah.
Do they still mark the roads?
Did they mark the roads?
Yes.
Oh,
Okay, I couldn't remember because I used the Ride with GPS. I had the audible turn-by-turn directions. So, yeah, I wasn't looking for the road markings. The weather was hot, as we mentioned. Every day was at least upper 80s. Many days were in the 90s. It's June near St. Louis, so I guess what can you expect? But that was a challenge sometimes. The Ride with GPS, as Pete said, was great. When you sign up for the ride, they send you the links so you can download all the routes to your phone or your Garmin or whatever. The hotel accommodations were mostly chain hotels and motels: La Quinta, Holiday Inn Express, Hampton Inn, Best Western, Super 8, which wasn't very super, I'm sorry to say. They were kind of challenged this year, the hotels, because they had hundreds of cyclists, of course, all wanting to check in at the same time. They were certainly short-staffed because of the pandemic. So, there were a few issues, I'd say, with the hotels. The interesting part is, and so in most towns, they had to have multiple motels because we couldn't all fit into one. So I think in Alton, there was a Hampton, a Best Western, and a Super 8 who all kind of shared the same property. Because I had signed up so late for the ride, of course, got the Super 8. And it was far from super, but the most interesting part was some of the other people who were staying there, non-cyclists who were staying there. And I suspect some of them might actually live there. And they were just astonished. They wanted to know, what's this bike ride that you're doing? And they could tell I was a cyclist. And so I told them about it, 6 days, and we're doing 50 miles a day. So one of them said to me, wow, he said, that must be quite a challenge for you. You're getting up there in the years. Well, okay, excuse me. Then, sure enough, another lady who was staying at the place came out in the hall and saw me and was asking me about the ride. She said, well, I just have to ask you, how old are you? They were quite obsessed with this concept of age and, people doing a 6-day bike tour at my age.
So one of the things that happened was when we got to this hotel, it was kind of like a lottery of whether you'd get into your room. And the day before, I got right into my room and people were sitting in the lobby waiting, and I was like, ha, ha, ha. And then the next day, it was my turn because I finished this ride and I sat in that lobby in my riding kit for about 4 hours before I got my room. And then one of the other things that helps you get to know your fellow riders is that you keep your bike in your hotel room. So it's riding on the elevator with 3 other sweaty people and their bikes and my bike is like the biggest bike there is. So that was also kind of fun and a way to meet people.
Yeah. Okay, food. Let's talk about food. The breakfast, of course, when you motel it, of course, the motels provided the breakfast. This year there will be camping, and I believe they do a catered breakfast of some sort at the campsite. Lunches, you were on your own, fast food, or like the one place I showed you where a local caterer had set up a lunch that you could buy. There was also, most days there was a rest stop provided by the organization. So you could get, the basics, bananas or power bars or whatever. And then the dinners, most nights the dinners were catered. They were supplied. They were part of the tour.
But not a buffet. It was out of the back of the van, prepackaged.
Right, because of the pandemic. So yeah, you weren't serving yourself. Someone else was serving you, or they had it already boxed for you. And most nights it was pretty good. I mean, obviously the quality varied from night to night. And when there was not a catered meal, we ate out, or you could choose one night if you wanted to skip the catered meal and eat out, which we did a couple of times. The other nice thing related to food was a couple of afternoons, the organizers had arranged for an ice cream truck to be parked in front of the motels. That was a nice treat.
For one of the lunches one day, I had finished the ride and there was a Wendy's about a quarter of a mile away, so I walked over to the Wendy's. I was going to go and sit in their air-conditioned room and have a nice, cool Wendy's single with cheese, and the building was closed. You could only go through the drive-thru. So I was on my bike in the drive-thru line, and I went around and got my meal and brought it back. And then the next day, I walked over there, and I walked through the line actually, and I was telling this to some other people who had been trying to go to McDonald's, and they were saying that McDonald's would not allow bikes or pedestrians in the drive-thru line.
That is correct. I was one of those people who tried to go through the McDonald's
So
line.
bikers are resourceful, and so they would give their money and their order to the person in the car and say, get me a single with cheese and a chocolate milkshake, and wait for that car to come through.
Yep. They would not serve me, even though I had been in line for like 10 minutes with my bike, but when I got up to order, oh no, it's a liability issue. Okay. So the Grand Illinois Bike Tour for 2022, they've already set the dates, June 12th through 17th. It will start in Hudson, Illinois, at a county park. And the beauty of it this year, and the reason you should all go, is because it's much, much closer to home this year. So it's only a little over a 2-hour drive as opposed to a 4-hour drive last year.
I think, I've not signed up yet, but if I do, this time I'm probably gonna drive down real early in the morning and just park my car and start the ride
Instead
rather
of
than
the night before.
going down there the night before. It just saves a night of hotel and
Right.
might be a little sleepier. I'm not gonna ride the long distance that day.
So here are the official stops on this year's tour.
Wow.
Exciting, huh?
You're
East
really
Peoria, come
back to
on,
normal.
come on, yeah, oh yeah, oh yeah. Okay, so the approximate prices, there will be a camping option this year. If you want to share a room, price will be around $8.95. If you want your own motel room, you can see it's a little over $1,100. They do kind of do the tiered pricing, so the later you wait to sign up, the price will inch up a little bit. I just received an email today, however, that they still have, I believe, at least 60 spots available for camping or moteling. So if you're thinking about it, I would urge you to jump on that, because in years past, the tour has sold out. So you don't want to wait too long. So here's what you can expect. 6 days of riding, obviously, Sunday through Friday you'll be riding. The mileage you see there, that's the base mileage each day. For those who, that's just not enough, many days they have a longer option. So if 40-some miles is not enough for you, you'll have some options.
No century options like on the graveyard, huh? No century options like on the graveyard.
Oh, I don't think there was a century
No.
option, was there? No,
No.
the most was 70-something maybe?
But
No.
there were the overachievers who had already ridden the route that we were on and were riding it backwards. So doing it twice.
What's a typical day when you say 43 to 49 miles per day? Is that leaving at 8 in the morning? And, I mean, how slow is this? You do that and by noontime you're done? Or is that ending up at 3 o'clock in the afternoon? How long is it taking?
That's a good question. It kind of depends, do you stop along the way? Are there things to see that day? Are you going to stop for lunch? You could start as early as you want to, after you get your breakfast at the motel. And then you could drag it out, or you can condense it. So it's really up to you and whoever you choose to ride with, what pace you want
I would
to ride
say
it out.
typically I would get up, I'd have my bike all prepped for the night before, put water in my bottles in the hotel room. I'd consume mass quantities at breakfast, 2 hard-boiled eggs, 2 cheese McMuffin things, oatmeal, banana, apple, and try to get as many calories in as possible. And then it would be ride until noon, 1 o'clock. And then several days I just took a shower and then went right, took a nap. I got up, went and got my food. Because of COVID, I brought it back into the room and ate it, and I was asleep at 7:30 to get up and do it all over again the next day. And I loved it. So it's not like real entertaining, but part of the thing, I think there a lot of people brought their own chair, foldable chair, and that was put on the truck with your luggage. And then you just claimed that when you got to the next stop. And then, did you have a chair?
I did.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So they brought them, and so then they would find a place in the shade, and everybody would sit out and eat their meals together, sitting in the shade, and there was some nice camaraderie there. So you can bring your foldable chair if you want to.
All right, so we're hoping to see many, many of you on the Grand Illinois Bike Tour this year.
You running again, Paul?
I'm doing it again. Pete, you're thinking about it?
Thinking about it.
Okay, I think Kathy Cologne has signed up, and I believe Scott Shadle, and who will be
Dave,
next?
can you do the light? Can you grab the light there for a second while we transition to the next one?
Any questions about Grand Illinois before we move to a different state?
Just, I'm kind of curious, how many of the people here tonight have actually been on a week-long ride?
Okay. Quite a few, yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
And those of you who haven't, are you considering this? I don't want to make it seem like it's something you shouldn't do. If you can get a week off and do it, it is a lot of fun. It's very challenging, rewarding to do. Afterwards, I took about a week off and just let my legs recover. But I also would say that you need to train up a little bit ahead of time, and you can't just jump on and do a week like that, especially with that heat. And hydration is important too.
Riding every day, yeah, yeah.
So
Won't
can
be
we?
as hot this year, right? Because it's further north. Right?
It's not St.
Right?
Louis, so.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's not St. Louis.
I got to the arch, and the Cubs had just swept St. Louis in a 3-game series or something like that. So I was looking for St. Louis fans that I could
You
give.
found 'em. You
I
found
found
'em.
them, and it was a mom and a dad, and their kids were going to the game that day. The stadium's right near the arch, and the kid had the jersey on and everything. So I gave grief to this 8-year-old kid about the Cubs.
Except you played dumb. You said,
Yeah.
hey, you know, how'd the Cardinals do this weekend? Oh, they got swept? Who were they playing?
So, thanks for bringing the treats. And if anybody wants to get a water or a treat or anything, and we got about a 1-minute intermission here while I transition the slides
brief
to the next
intermission.
one. The next presentation will be as long. Change shirts.